Yes, we have. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee for Thursday, June 17th, and welcome. First order of business, do we have any public comment? Michelle, has anybody asked to speak with us?
No, Rich, you haven't received any requests.
Okay. Again, I've made this comment before, but it really strikes me that we have not seen nearly the public engagement at the Public Safety Committee through the pandemic, which is, I think, really unfortunate given the topics that we've covered in the last year. I'm hoping that we could perhaps get back to in-person meetings relatively soon and hopefully get more engagement, but there it is. Are there any changes to the agenda? Anything from anybody? Okay. Can we get some motion on the minutes from May 20th, 2021? Shauna moves, Glenn seconds. Any questions or comments on the minutes? All right, I'll call the vote. Shauna?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. Let's see, I have chair's report, but I would like to move that a little bit because I think we have some guests with us who want to speak with us regarding the discussion of hunting laws, because there was a change in the New York State law that was included in the recently approved budget. And I think I see them there at the table in the conference room. Is that Dick Costello?
Yes.
And who else is with us?
Gary Argersinger.
Oh, welcome, and thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
I'd like to give you the floor, and maybe you could talk to us for a few minutes about what these changes in the New York State law are about.
Okay, thanks for having us here. Appreciate your time. We feel pretty passionate about this 12-year-old law that the governor signed into law and passed on to the counties to adapt it. A lot of reasons why we think it's a good thing. It promotes family unity. It's really safer than riding a bicycle. Gary, we'll get into that in a second. There's a lot of laws pertaining to just this topic of 12-year-olds using firearms and crossbows to hunt deer at 12 years old. It's a wholesome activity that you can do for a lifetime. It shows great respect for harvesting our natural resources, and game animals are definitely our natural resources, which any biologist will tell you have to be managed by human beings. Otherwise, there's a major problem. Gary's we've both been hunter ed instructors for a whole long time, 1973 or some such year when we started. We have a lot of experience at dealing with potential hunters and people that take our courses from all ages. But again, I think about a 12-year-old and his dad. In my case, I hunted, but my kids, when they were 12, they were more interested with a golf club than hunting. But the point being, it's something they do together. It keeps them off the street. It shows them a path of ethics and a path of responsibility. And in a second, Gary will tell you the parameters of which this has to evolve. I'll turn it over to Gary.
Okay, I'm Gary Argersinger. I'm a member, I'm actually the president of the Tompkins County Sportsmen's Federation. And I'm also a master instructor for Tompkins, Cortland, and Tioga counties, for both hunter education and bow hunter education. The new law that came out or was passed by the legislature pretty much follows the parameters that we use for youth turkey hunting. 12 and 13-year-olds right now can hunt small game. They can hunt turkeys, still considered a small game animal. They have to hunt with a mentor. There's no way that they can be able to go out and in the woods by themselves. The mentor has to be with them. They has to be able to touch and be in contact with them at all times. They all have to wear blaze orange, 250 inches, or a blaze orange hat, visible 360 degrees. They also have to have permission if they go with somebody other than a parent. That permission slip is in the New York State booklet that we have for hunting and trapping rules and regulations. The mentor has to have at least 3 years experience in hunting, had to have a license for 3 years, has to be 21 years or older. A question was asked to me at the Federation, well, what about the kids that don't have parents that hunt? And I took a poll of all the clubs that are members of the Federation. There was not a club in that Federation who did not have members that were willing to be mentors for some of the youth. We feel it's very important. In teaching these courses, I find the 12 and 13-year-olds, they grasp more than some of the 25 and 30-year-olds that take the course for the first time.
And they score better.
They score much better. They're much more in tune. They ask more questions. We have a conservation officer come to all the courses, and they really perk up when they see the conservation officer. We're very strong in ethics, and I think this law, and if it passed and allowed people or kids to hunt in Tompkins County with a rifle or shotgun, I think it's just going to build strength within the families and within the community and within the sporting clubs itself.
Okay. I had a couple clarifications. Charles Pace, the District 7 Vice Chair, sent some information to us. And one of the things, I also spoke with him on the phone. One of the things I thought he said was that you have to be licensed, and I assume that means the 12-year-old would have to go through the hunter safety course in order to participate.
Correct.
Okay. And then he also sent some maps of New York State and the country, and it seemed like a lot of the counties in New York State have opted in under this legislation. And the other item it seemed to be is that New York State was an outlier, that almost all states allow 12-year-olds to hunt. Is that the case?
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, we were the only state in the country.
And I apologize in the background, I'm getting a spam risk call on my telephone.
Rich, as far as the counties, I don't think Gary and I there's a couple of them we're not sure of. Some of them we are sure of, Gary.
Schuyler County is accepted at Chemung County. We're not sure of Tioga County. Cortland County, I believe, just passed it.
Cuba County.
Cuba County.
Okay.
Surrounding counties have.
All right. Do any of the committee members have questions or comments? Henry?
Yes, thank you guys for coming. I read the materials that Richard sent, and what I'm curious is what's the difference between a 12-year-old hunting and a 14-year-old hunting? I mean, is there really that much of a difference in the 2 years?
I mean, as far as allowing them or the want?
As far as allowing them.
No, I don't think there is. Not when they see, we can teach the hunter education course to 11-year-olds. We can't teach them unless they're 11, and they have to be turning 12-year-olds before the first hunting season. So we get a lot of 11-year-olds in the course. They cannot shoot a live fire gun, but they can handle the inert guns. They can handle the lasers. We have air rifles that they can use. And I'd say probably out of the younger group, we're getting more 11 and 12-year-olds in the courses than we are 14s because they've already taken it at 11. So is there a difference? No, I don't think there's going to be a difference. I think it's just their passion, and a lot of it's family passion too.
It used to be 16 when
Yes.
In our day, it was 16 before you could hunt here. A long time to wait.
Right.
I think it's okay. Yeah, 14 is fine. 12 is just as fine because it's an attachment to the activity.
Yeah.
It's an earlier attachment to the activity, and it's safeguarded in many, many ways, as Gary mentioned. They have to be on the ground. Did we say that?
They can't hunt a tree. They have to be on the ground. Again, they have to be able to, mentor has to be able to physically reach out and touch the person. And I gotta admit, I would assume right now, most fathers and parents that are gonna take their young ones out probably won't even carry a gun with them. They'll probably be using their father's gun. they've been setting with their fathers, 12-year-olds been setting with their fathers in the woods, which is legal. They just can't shoot.
Can't participate, no.
I know it also talked about people going to different states. I assume if they went to Pennsylvania, the 12-year-olds should have to be licensed in Pennsylvania.
I hunted in Pennsylvania for 45 years, Henry. I shared the woods with 12-year-olds. It's been 12-year-olds in Pennsylvania for as long as I've been hunting, which has been quite a while. And I felt very safe in Bradford County in the deer woods with 12-year-olds on the ground. That's been their age forever, as far as I can remember.
Along that line,
I don't know if that answered your question.
excuse me, but along that line, in our courses, Pennsylvania requires 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds to have a hunter safety course. Most parents don't take them to Pennsylvania to take the course. They take the course in New York and then go to Pennsylvania because it's close for them. And they'll accept New York's hunter safety program.
Okay, so they do not need. So as long as they take the hunting safety course in New York, that they can go hunting in Pennsylvania at 12.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Shauna?
Yeah, with all due respect, I would hope that whenever we have this conversation that you would also refer to the mothers that might want to take their sons out, as well as the daughters that might want to go hunting too. This is not just a male, it certainly
That
is
is all-
male dominated, but males
Shauna,
are not
that's
the
all
only
inclusive.
ones that can shoot guns.
All inclusive.
It's inclusive, exactly right.
I hope that we open that conversation up though and include both sexes here.
You will.
It will.
And certainly I noted in the material that Charles Pace sent, it was very careful to say, yes, it's both males and females are out participating. And that's a good point. Henry?
I also noticed that the list of counties that the major, like Monroe County, Onondaga County, and Erie County have not opted in. And so I assume that those places where those three cities are have not joined in and not opted into the program.
Well, it's relatively new as far as the governor's signature is concerned. And so it's getting spread around. Obviously, Tompkins County's very much aware of it, and we're here to promote that. Perhaps, I can't speak for the other counties, but just perhaps their legislature hasn't received the time of discussion. I don't know.
Or put it on their agenda for that
Right.
matter. You know, other more important things with COVID that they feel they might want to get on their agenda before they address this.
Is there a time limit of which we have to act on this?
Syllabus goes to print. Gary, correct me if I'm wrong. I
It's
think
too
on
late.
the,
It's too late.
Is it
It
on
went
the
to print
15th of
already in
June?
June.
yeah, I went to 15th of June. However, when the rifle bill was passed, it was an addendum, and it was referred to as checking an addendum when the book came out the 15th of June. The governor didn't sign that until after the book was printed. But when it was printed, it said refer to the rifle bill in Tompkins County to see the status at this particular email address. And so even though it was printed, if this were to come to pass and it's already printed, there'll be a way to publicize it so that people would know it. So the time frame is come and gone as far as the syllabus, the print of the rules and regs is concerned. But that's not to say that it wouldn't be available. The info would not be available. I don't know if I answered you, Henry, correct.
Dave?
Yeah, thank you. The syllabus being printed, yeah, that was whatever it was, June 15th or something like that.
Right.
But you have until September something to actually opt in. It won't be printed, you know, won't be in the book, obviously, but I believe it's September 15th or something like that.
Right. The last one with the rifle bill, they just put a website in there to check on Tompkins County's status. Go to this website. And that's what most people did.
I'd like to mention this too, if you folks don't know it. There were 0 incidents in Tompkins County where rifles were concerned. Absolutely 0. Clean
Yeah,
slate.
thank you for bringing that up, Dick. I was hoping you could talk to us about the experience the last full hunting season with our changes. And it sounds like it was a successful season.
A total success. The conservation officers kept us informed, and they would be the ones in the front lines investigating any incidents. And I was very happy to hear from one of our great ECOs that said we had 0 incidents in Tompkins County with a rifle, none. And we expected none. We expected none. And we'll continue to expect none through Hunter Ed.
Well, please, yes. No more, no incidents. I did have a question that I assume that when 12 and 13-year-olds are going out hunting under supervision, their parents have to be really concerned about them out there, and that the actual track record, the safety record across the country with 12 and 13-year-olds hunting is pretty good. Is that the case, or have there been incidents?
No, that is the case. In New York State, the hunting accidents, the average age group for that, believe it or not, between 38 and 42 years of age.
Okay.
Those are where most of the incidents and accidents happen. Youth hunting, it's been very safe.
Yeah, very safe.
And as far as the mentor program goes, if a mentor other than a parent, mother or father, takes them out, they have to have a signed form from the parent to the mentor. So that's the way that they'll be tracking. And believe me, conservation officers will look for that if it's not a parent or guardian, legal guardian.
The conservation officers support this in
Yes.
Tompkins County.
Tompkins County.
100% support it.
Okay,
Yes, they
anybody
support.
else have questions? Sheriff?
Thanks, Rich. Just a quick comment. Obviously, I don't get to have a vote in this, but as sheriff, I would definitely support this. And I think anytime you can provide responsible gun ownership associated with training, I would be all for it. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. What's the will of the committee? I believe we would need to pass a local law to opt in under the New York State law. What would you like to do?
Rich, I'll move that we make a local law to do just that.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Glenn seconds. Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, I certainly have a comment. Oh, go ahead, Shauna, you go first.
Yeah, so I actually, we just drove to Rhode Island from Ithaca, and this was actually a topic of debate in my car for about 2 hours. And I have a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And it was interesting because my 13-year-old, her answer very quickly was no. And then she kind of backtracked and said, it really depends on the kid. Quite honestly, if I represented a rural area, I might feel a little bit different. If I was in Groton or Newfield and knew that I represented more hunters, I would probably feel a little bit different, but I don't. And so I will not be supporting new legislation to allow 12-year-olds to hunt.
Okay. Is anybody else? I will jump in then. I certainly have great concerns about gun safety in our country. It's such a topic of argument, and it's easy to see the problems with guns. At the same time, this isn't really about guns, it's about hunting and responsible use of weapons. Where we really have trouble is in other areas. This seems to be teaching some appropriate use of guns for an appropriate purpose. It's also a family activity, and I like the mentoring aspect of it. That is really important. That's not to say I don't have great concerns about what's happening with a lot of gun issues in our country and our inability to address those issues. Keeping those in mind, I'm still going to support the motion on the floor. Anybody else wish to, anything? Are we ready to vote then? I'll call the roll and order on the screen. Let's see, Shauna,
No.
Henry,
No.
David,
Yes,
Glenn,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So that passes. So Michelle, I believe the procedure is we would take that to Jonathan to help us in crafting a local law.
Yes, and we'll come back with a resolution to call a public hearing.
Okay. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in and talking with us. Always good to hear from you, and more to come on this.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right, moving on.
hey, Rich,
Yes.
for Michelle's information, I sent something on this to Brittany to go to Jonathan about a month ago. So
Okay.
just, so they've already got some of the information.
Okay,
Okay, we'll follow up.
good. So hopefully we can address this at our July meeting. And just for clarification, it sounds like there are some deadlines. If we were to try to address this for the upcoming hunting season, it sounds like we'd need to have it in place by September, Dave, you said?
Yeah, I can probably find the exact date. I think it's in the information that I sent to Brittany, but
Okay,
I have a copy of it here.
all right.
I'll
I
have to
mean,
go
it's all
through it.
dependent on what happens with the vote at the whole legislature, of course, but,
Right.
okay. All right. Let's see, next item, chair's report, which we reversed. I'd like to go back to that. I did have some comments I wanted to make and just get some feedback from the other committee members. And Lisa, you and I spoke about this very briefly. But one of the discussion items we've had with regard to the APR, now I'm having trouble with that money, was using some of it for a capital program at our jail, at our public safety building. And the idea would be to use some of it for effectively short-term, very needed improvements there. And I'd like to make sure we have a conversation on whether that's the path we want to go down, or if we want to think in terms of a more longer term capital program to actually address the larger issue. We were starting to have those discussions before the pandemic, and obviously we were in a different financial situation then, in some ways better, in some ways worse. But I think we do need to try to talk about that so that we can make a decision to do the shorter term fixes, if that's what we really think we should be doing. And in my thinking about it, the main decision would seem to be what we would want to try to end up in terms of number of beds. And that obviously is a fairly complicated number. Right now, we've got a capacity of 82, but we're running numbers in the 30s so that we have, a lot of empty bed space. And the configuration is not optimal for that in any event. We haven't really been able to gain any operational efficiency because of the layout of the jail. And certainly we haven't been able to get the Commission on Corrections to come around to let us change any kind of our staffing levels, at least in any significant way. And Sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong on any of that. So certainly, if we're thinking about long-term operational cost savings, investing in the larger capital program would be the way to get there. Spending the shorter-term capital money won't really change the layout of the jail and probably won't change any of our operational cost, at least significantly. But my other thoughts on this is that anything we do, we would need to get approval from the Commission on Corrections. So if we tried to build a smaller jail, we would need to convince them that that is the right thing to do. I think we've done something really different and extraordinary in Tompkins County with our Alternatives to Incarceration. and our careful programming around it that has allowed us to seemingly change our normal down to these numbers that we're seeing now. This is really good news for our taxpayers and frankly for our criminal justice system, I think, as long as we're doing it without seeing crime rates increase. And generally we haven't seen that, although there are some recent trends that are a little bit disturbing, particularly inside the city of Ithaca. And if we're trying to determine a number, that's a pretty important variable. What might happen with our crime rate, and also what might happen with reimagining public safety, and particularly city issues of what they might want to be doing with their police department and whether that would impact crime rates. You know, there's a lot to think about there, and I'm trending towards we might want to consider getting some consulting assistance to help us think about this issue in the longer term, unless we just want to focus on the short-term capital program. But I want to put it out there and at least get you started thinking on it and start getting some feedback. Does anybody have any response to that? Glenn?
Rich, are you talking about on the short term fixes to the jail and the building, or what are you talking?
Mainly inside the jail, I believe, is where the capital program would be focused. Say on the HVAC, on some of the control systems, but the sheriff can help us with that.
All right, and I'd like to hear what Derek and Jen have to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, guys. One thing that immediately comes to mind, I know we've talked about this so much for so many years, it's hard to keep track of everything, but I know we talked about the short-term investment, which I thought was going to happen this next year for some reason. I've been meeting with facilities and all that, but if you recall, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I am, a lot of these short-term things could potentially impact any changes to the building later on. I think we had a discussion that, you know, there was some things maybe we were going to take on that we wouldn't do if we were going to, you know, more rehab the jail. That's at least what I remember. And again, I could be wrong, but we should keep that in mind. And I will add that, you know, I certainly don't think we need more beds. We definitely need a bigger jail or a bigger building, but not more beds. It's the program space and office space and storage space and things like that, again, that are really crushing us. We actually had an opportunity recently from the commission to start storing some more juveniles potentially from other counties, which I was interested in because it would bring in some funds. But sadly, you know, our staffing just wouldn't allow it at this time. So we had the space to potentially house some of them, but we didn't feel we could appropriately handle it with our staffing. So that's kind of a two-edged sword.
Maybe we could revisit that during your report, because I'd like to hear more about the staffing issues. But I see several hands up. Lisa, did you have something to jump in with on?
Probably just to clarify more what Derek, or confirm what Derek was saying, was that in lieu of having a revamped public safety building and jail in the capital program with COVID last year and all of the reductions, and recognizing that some very near-term fixes are needed now in the facility, we elected to put, I think, $4 million in the capital plan for those necessary upgrades and improvements next year, and I believe the following year, to get those done. I know Arel has been working together with you, Sheriff, on what those are. So you know, those will probably need to happen regardless, because even if we move forward in consideration of a new building, the 24/7 usage, they will need to do repair and upgrades in the near term.
Okay, Shauna?
Yeah, I would like to see us move forward with the renovations for the jail to make it more habitable for people that work there and people that have to stay there. You know, I think that we're kind of in an interesting time where we've had conversations about regional jails. Things with bail reform are still kind of up in the air. And we just don't know where we're going to land. And I would really be hesitant of talking about building a new jail and spending a ton of money on that. And I know that might or might not be part of the conversation. But I would definitely not be in support of spending 30 or 40 million on a new jail. And I would absolutely support us talking about decreasing our numbers for our local jail.
Okay, Henry?
Yes, because when you talk about long-term, you're talking about building a new jail, right?
That would be the long-term capital program, yes.
Yeah, I'd not be for that. Also, maybe we can ask Derek that if they build the new jails the way they're built now with wedges, could you make it any smaller? Or did you have to basically do it a certain size no matter how many people you have? I mean, basically, can you scale it down any?
Henry, I think the last time we spoke of this and we did our tours of the different facilities, I thought we were kind of leaning towards not replacing the entire building, but potentially adding some pods to change the dynamic of how people are housed, to improve the quality of life for them and for our staff, and potentially reduce the number of employees we need at all times. I thought that's where we were going the last time we spoke. And that's kind of, if this does move forward, that's kind of where I would be at. I don't think we need to replace the entire building. Just maybe switch to a more pod type setup.
Okay, because I thought that you were talking about building an entirely new jail with pods.
No, I mean, I think we have talked about that, but I don't think that's where we were going the last time we had these discussions.
It all gets hazy because of the pandemic, and we just sort of dropped everything. So, and I'm not, in my comments and bringing this up, I'm not saying we should be doing anything in particular, but if we're going to spend $4 to $5 million, we should make sure that this is the direction, that we're not thinking that we should be doing something else. Anyway, Jen.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple comments that I think the pandemic has kind of highlighted a couple of the pitfalls and limitations of our building as well, at least in my view. It's kind of highlighted our inability to socially distance our civil staff in the civil office, as well as the requirement that our road and our corrections divisions have to share locker rooms, because that's just what the space allows. And it's a very small space, definitely in the women's locker room, because we're kind of increasing our female staff at this point. And also the raise the age legislation and our ability to house temporarily more than one juvenile in our interview room, which happens to be our only interview room. So if we are temporarily housing a juvenile in our interview room, we have no other place to utilize that room to question anyone else, whether it be another juvenile or another person involved in another matter. So some of those, I agree that the jail definitely needs the most attention, but our road and our civil side also have some deficiencies that I think should be addressed.
Thank you. Dave.
Rich, thank you. I would definitely be in favor of the hybrid model where we rehab a portion of the old building and use the current jail space for other purposes, and then build a pod onto the jail to make that portion of it be more efficient and easier to man. It just makes sense. And if we're going to spend $4 or $5 million to do something like that, I think maybe we should seriously consider having that whole package drawn up by an architect and get it all approved so that we could work out the best timeline and the best way to do that. I know it's going to cost more than $4 or $5 million to do that, but it certainly shouldn't be $50 million. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Glenn?
I agree with David. We shouldn't spend money to correct an old problem just to create a new problem. We should hire a consultant and find out what phases we could spend this money in and get a complete plan before we move forward.
Okay. Again, I'm not sure of what the current capital program is in this short-term thing, but my understanding was, say, it's to address the HVAC system, which seems to be a real problem, and some of the control systems, which are antiquated, that you really wouldn't get any reuse out of if you did the larger capital program, but I could be wrong about that. So I'd like to make sure I'm thinking the right way on this. Lisa?
Yeah, I think you're right, Rich, that those are the items that are earmarked for the current capital program, that it wouldn't be a phased approach to a redesign.
Okay. So there really would not be any long-term benefit, but it would serve the short-term need. Although short-term, you're saying, is up to even 7 years.
Yeah, I think that was the idea, my understanding, the idea of the timeline, just to make the necessary improvements to get us through the next 5 to 7 years while we determine, the rebuild.
Certainly, if we extend this 5 to 7 years, all of us will probably be gone, and it'll be somebody else's problem. So that's a real benefit, I think, to the whole community, because they'll be much smarter and abler than us, and they can solve it. But maybe taking on, I guess we'd have to do the math. If we can delay borrowing the amount of money that a new public safety building will require for 5 to 7 years, there's some real savings there. Although probably the total package price would go up by then. But anyway, okay, anything further on that? I didn't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but I wanted to make sure we had that discussion. Henry?
Yes, we also haven't seen the full effects of bail reform yet. And we also don't know what parole reform is going to look like either, do we? It was just passed. And so we really don't have an idea of numbers in the jail, plus with the increase in crime. And so I'd see us being a couple of years before we'd even consider looking at a new complete jail.
Certainly you wouldn't want to pick a number of beds that was too small.
Right.
But 82 is probably more than we need, unless there's some significant change in crime rates or our approach. Say if we stopped using alternatives to incarceration or something like that. But yeah, I don't think we need to go forward with 82 if we were starting from scratch. But picking that number seems to be a pretty hard thing. Sheriff?
Yeah, and just to make it even more difficult, we all know the problems we've had with juveniles and finding placement and things like that. I mean, there may be room for discussion to how to incorporate that into our facility as well, to keep our juveniles local and not be shipping them off all over the state, and having them participate in what we can provide here and making room for them as well. Just a thought.
I think it's a good thought.
Me too.
That's been a really ugly issue in the very few instances, fortunately, where we've had to house 16 and 17-year-olds. We really haven't had any good options. Yeah. Henry?
Yes, Derek, can you house a juvenile at a separate facility next to the jail?
Yeah, we could do that. They'd have to be separate. When I talked to the Commissioner of Corrections a week or two ago about the juveniles that they were trying to find placement for, they were willing to consider putting them in our jail if I could handle it, but it had to be set up in a way so they were completely separate from the general population. And as we've talked about before, we've had our dorms empty for some time. We had, when the state readies backed up, we did have to use them again, but they're now back empty again. So that's the space we considered for them. So it is doable. They just got to be somewhat separated.
Is that something we're this short-term capital program could make some changes to allow us that option?
I don't think right now, Rich, it would, just because of the staffing issues. I mean, if we had pods and things like that and our staffing demands were lessened, maybe some of those staff could be diverted to a cause like that. But it's so hard to project how this would all work out. I mean, what Henry mentioned, it's difficult to say right now with everything going on. I certainly wouldn't want to pick the number of beds on my own. That'd be a scary proposition, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, no, my question was, would there be some short-term capital program piece where we could create a separation so that you could use the beds for the general population, but if they were empty, you could use them for juveniles?
It's possible. I'd have to have further conversations with the commissioner and see what would be involved in what he was proposing. But like I said, I kind of, after talking to Ray Bunce and stuff, I kind of dismissed it on the short term just because of our staffing issues, but it's possible.
Okay, all right. Jen?
I just wanted to add to that. I was on a conference call today with the sheriffs and undersheriffs, and this was a topic of discussion. The Office of Children and Family Services have been reaching out to several different county jails to see if they'd be willing to house juveniles 16 and 17, because I think they are starting to recognize that they didn't necessarily have the steps in line when they implemented this. My understanding is Monroe County is currently doing this. Ulster County and a couple other counties are considering it, but it didn't necessarily have to be a separate facility. Obviously, they would just have to be housed separately than the adults, but it wouldn't have to necessarily be a separate facility. But like Derek said, our staffing levels, unfortunately, right now, we couldn't entertain it. They asked if we would be willing to have another conversation if our staffing levels increased or improved.
I was laughing that it only took them 2 years to kind of figure out there's a problem here. I'm glad they're waking up. Anyway, Dan.
I think it would be really good idea for the county to explore that option. I know initially there were some legislative changes that were needed to be made, but Lisa can probably speak to it. We're part of this 11 county consortium that's talking about building a $21 million facility out in Steuben County for juveniles, or something to that nature. And maybe Tompkins County's contribution would be better spent creating a space for our juveniles locally, because it's going to cut down in the long term on transportation costs and overtime and everything else for corrections officers having to transport these juveniles. Plus, it keeps them closer to home for access to their attorneys and their families and other things.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we should be thinking about that a little bit with this short-term program. Certainly more to come there. Anything else? Anybody have any further thoughts on this before we move on? Okay. Let's see. Next up is county administration and reimagining public safety update. Is Deanna with us?
Yes, she is.
Yeah, there she is. Deanna, how you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing awesome. Good afternoon. Good to see good people from Tompkins County today. And before I do, I want to defer to our interim county administrator. Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to lead in with? Or
I'll hand it right over to you for the reimagining update if you'd like.
Okay. So I'll start with a simple joke. So I encourage Henry to give gusto in his updates. And so I'm going to do my best to make this as exciting, but not speak as fast, so that when Glenn looks at me, he doesn't look at me as like, what does she say? So first of all, I'd like to start with stating that the Tompkins County Legislature passed a resolution to create the positions and the program, including the program budget for the Community Justice Center. We met on Tuesday with the city in preparation for hoping this would be passed to discuss outlining of a contract between the city and the county. I've sent some information to our finance department in terms of payment, what that might look like, and looking at shared language. There are some similar agreements for services, even though it's a different work here that the county has in place with the city. And so we're looking at using some of that language, and we're bringing in our attorneys for that. And so according to our process plan, we should have that done by the end of next month. We also will be scheduling some walkthroughs. We know the location of the CJC has been a topic of conversation. So we will be doing some walkthroughs of some of our spaces here at Tompkins County. We've talked to the city about that as well. And so we'll be coming back to you with more information about recommendation and why we've come to that. Ultimately, we want to be as inclusive as possible so that we are ensured that folks feel welcome. We know that there's conversation about folks in the community wanting to come in, whether or not it's more of a coordinating role, and what does that look like? So we want to be able to have an opportunity to think about it a little bit further, and then for sure, whatever opportunity exists, that we take advantage of that. In addition, we also have re-engaged Center for Policing Equity in terms of the conversation. So we're meeting with them on Tuesday about how they may support us in the next round of the work. And so we're meeting with them on Monday to discuss things further. How we have this piece is into two parts. We recognize that I believe the Tompkins County Legislature has taken a very, very clear stand on what was recommendation number one. But we also, with the IPD, we also recognize that Ithaca is a part of Tompkins County. So with that, the CPE will be working with, potentially working with some of those folks doing some work there, but also we're trying to make sure that the city is able to do whatever work they're trying to do. But then also our shared recommendations are not necessarily, lack of a better word, absorbed with that process. And so that we're able to continue to do the work that we need to do. I will be sending back to all the departments for a second round to review the job descriptions that were sent out prior to the vote. We'll be having a search process discussion with the City of Wichita Human Resources Department, our county Human Resources Department, and we will having a conversation with using our recruiters as well and seeing what that might look like. We're also mindful of the conversation on Tuesday around the county administrator search. And so because this is a collaborative approach, we'll have a lot more robust resources to do some of this work, but also keeping in mind what we've heard this week. We also be looking at community engagement around this work as well. We are getting more questions about how the community can be involved. One of the things that, and Dom, I'm going to call you out on this, Dom, the project management software, we are looking at implementing what's called a Q Markets software for project management that was approved in the budget. And so we had our first, we had our launch, I believe, of the software on, was it Monday or Tuesday of this week at 9 o'clock. And so Dom, I want to just pass it to you for a second. Teamwork makes the dream work. You can talk a little bit about that and where we're headed with the project management software.
Absolutely. I'll give a high-level overview. First, stating that it won't be the only way we engage community, but it will be the place where all community engagement efforts will be able to be sort of categorized and visible by all. The plan for that project management software is both external and internal. The external way people will be able to interact is each recommendation by the city and the county, people will be able to view, learn more about, comment on, vote on, provide their own ideas how that might work, open to anyone. And internally, different things can be assigned to people. So responding to questions from the community can be assigned to people, and people can sort of track the progress along each recommendation. So when it moves from, okay, a working group has now been started, people can get updates on each individual sort of action step within it. So that's the high level overview, and we have a team from the county and the city that will be working on the inputs for that, and we'll update you all as soon as we have it, and we'll be doing sort of some trainings for the community and staff on how to use it as well. That will be sort of archived on YouTube as well. Anything I missed, Deanna?
Perfect, and we'll continue to share that, and once it goes live, we're excited to demo that for you and also for the community as well, which is why we'd like to have this software. So thank you, Dom, I appreciate that. Then two other things we have in our conversations with the city, we're trying to ensure that there's parallel communication to the degree that we can around the launch and different things. And so we'll make sure we continue to do that as well. Also, we will be requesting a meeting between, I think, Rich, I believe you mentioned this, and Shauna, in our last meeting around the legislative engagement and the process and what that would look like. One of the things I believe we heard on Tuesday night was, I think Martha may have mentioned that there are a lot of committees and a lot of meetings and things of that nature. And there are a lot of meetings, but we also want to keep you all informed to the degree that you feel like you would like to be informed. At the same time, what is the balance between keeping people informed and what's the expectation around that? So I'll be sending a calendar notice to both of you. Lastly, and probably most important to a lot of folks in this, we recognize that we're also entering the budget season. And so we will be, I think Jen and I have had a couple of conversations around ensuring that as we roll out these recommendations to the degree that we can, how do we line them up with the budget process and make sure that our recommendations for funding for reimagining align with the budget process, and also understanding what those needs are. And also we've also heard that from human resources as they think about recruiting and things of that nature. So I'll be following up with Lisa soon around that. But then also I know that it's been stated multiple times that our sheriff's office is pretty limited administratively, not intellectually, but administratively, like there's not that many of them. And so what does it look like in terms of what that might look like for next steps? And so those conversations are being had as well. And we'd like to make sure that folks feel as included as they possibly can. So that's what I know. And then Henry, I did see your note. I'm sorry for referencing the city of Wichita instead of the city of Ithaca. My apologies. I miss my mom. I haven't seen her in a while. And so maybe that's where that's coming from. And so, hi, Mom. That's all I got.
Okay. Let's see, I had two things. One is, did you use the expression teamwork makes the dream work?
Absolutely. All day.
Okay. I'm going to steal that. Thank you. The other was just, you're absolutely correct. We had a discussion at the legislature meeting about these positions and the recruiting and hiring. And the message I heard from our HR director was that this is feasible, that of course we have to pay attention to the county administrator search and recruitment, but that it should be possible to proceed with this on a parallel track. And so I certainly don't want a message out there that we need to delay. If you run into obstacles and it does need to slow down for some reason, please let us know. But otherwise, don't feel we're directing anybody to do anything in terms of stepping back on trying to find the right people for these jobs. That was my interpretation of the discussion we had.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree
Okay,
with that.
Henry.
I just wanted to say that we're going to, I made note of that to know that we're going to be bolstering our partnerships, just making sure that we are staffed appropriately to be able to do some additional recruiting and leveraging all of our resources in alignment with the work. That's
Great. Okay, Henry.
Yes, thank you, Deanna, for that presentation. I'd like to know a couple of things. I mean, you're the person who's the key point person for reimagining public safety for the county. Who is your equivalent at the city?
Shelley Michelle Nunn, but they've also brought in a lady named Melanie Faraday, and then also Dominic Recchio, is our community comms person here. So yes, there's parallel tracks. And then also with the involvement of CPE, Dr. Tracy Kazee will potentially be involved again, moving us forward. But then also, we've also shared the feedback that we received from our departments as well, in terms of how this is structured when we move forward.
And did you mention that the city is going to name the people in the task force soon?
I can tell you, as a county employee, I mind county business, sir. However, I am aware that there are discussions from behind the scenes from a situational awareness perspective. They have kept us apprised. However, I will say, Dom, I need you to get me out of this here in a second. We will be working in concert. How about that?
I think working in concert is a good way to put it. And I'll just add one additional thing that we've been very encouraging to the city, and they've been very receptive of how best to work with the county in terms of the technical support for that group. So I feel really good about where we are personally, based on my last few conversations with them on how they go about announcing that. We still, like Deanna said, don't have the exact timeline, and their communications person tasked with this, Melody, is really getting up to speed with everything. So it's putting a little bit of a delay, but I think that it will lead to better product, more engagement and better collaboration with people on this screen right now for that. So I feel confident about where that's headed.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
certainly, Henry, I want to say in regard to the collaboration, teamwork makes the dream work.
That's what I hear.
Okay, anybody else have questions for Deanna or about reimagining public safety at this point? Okay, let's move on. Next up is our sheriff. Welcome, Derek.
Thanks again, Rich. Just a couple things I'll add. Our staffing, yeah, we had 4 more resignations this week. Couple in the jail and the road. We also had some interviews, which was positive, at least for corrections side. We offered employment contingent on passing backgrounds and all the required stuff to 2 new applicants. The road patrol, I think I mentioned last time, we have 2 in the academy now. They will be out. Geez, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say September, or maybe it's earlier than that, this summer.
They'll start their field train at the end of September, and then they should be off by Christmas time on their own.
Yeah, so we also potentially are hiring a couple other deputies off the list. They won't probably get to go to the academy. We may be able to squeeze them in near the end of the year, but it may be next year. We completed our the job fair at the Ithaca Mall. We got some people potentially there that are going to sign up for our upcoming test. We're going to attend a job fair at SUNY Cortland next week. We've been working on some stuff we could do in-house too to make the process hopefully a little easier. Staff had put together, just finished it today, a video for new recruits showing them how to take the physical fitness test and how to pass it and how it's scored. So that's going to be hopefully pretty helpful. We find a lot of people come to that and they're kind of caught off guard. They don't know how to properly perform some of the tests. So this gives them that education right up front. We're also going to have some training seminars, or at least one, I think, Jen.
There'll be 4.
4, okay. For the physical fitness part, and then study sessions as well coming up for the written test. That's about it. On a positive note, our boat is back working again. I think I reported last time it was out of commission. That was a little stressful. They got it working. We're still going to continue pursuing that seizure boat I mentioned last month, just because it's due. But right now we are operational on the water. We're not out there as much as we were last year just because of staffing, but it's available to us. So we're slowly getting there, at least I hope.
Okay, Henry.
Yes, thank you, Derek. You said those were resignations, not retirements, those 4?
One was a retirement, and the others were resignations. One went to Cortland PD. One is getting into a different field altogether, into nursing from the jail. So yeah.
Yeah, they were all 4 resignations. One's transferring to the Elmira Police Department. One's going to the City of Cortland Police Department. 2 are leaving for different occupations.
And we got the investigator spot that we just got notification to, Jen.
Oh yeah, yeah. So 1 retirement on top of that as well.
So how many total spots for people on disability and people who've retired do you have opened?
Oh my gosh, I can't even keep track. Honestly, it changes by the week.
Probably 9 or 10 on the road, and
yeah,
probably the same in the jail.
Yeah, we did the 3 CO interviews today, like I mentioned, and we're hoping to offer them contingent employment as soon as we can. It's kind of hard to explain. We got some things we got to get around on our current civil service list to be able to hire these people. And a lot of these COs we're hiring, they're not even on a list right now. We're just hiring them, and they're taking a risk that they're going to pass the test, get reachable on it, and then pass the background check. So we're really being aggressive and jumping ahead a little bit just to try to get some people into the building.
And I assume you don't have,
Yeah, go ahead.
I assume you don't know anything about what Albany's, that all our efforts of lobbying fell on deaf ears.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with that. Yeah, I couldn't comment.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Are the staffing issues you're seeing, it seems like this is a national issue. Are we seeing a reflection of that, or do you think there's something going on locally that's different?
I could just make a brief comment just because I went to the undersheriff's conference last week and just touched base with a lot of the undersheriffs in the other counties. And while I do think a part of it is on a national level, I think for some reason Tompkins is seeing it a little bit more drastically than other counties that are surrounding us. Cortland, Seneca, Saratoga, some other counties are reporting their best staffing levels they've ever seen. So while I do see part of it as a national trend, counties that are surrounding us that are not too far away from us are not seeing that.
Yeah, I think it's more than fair to say that the employees of the sheriff's office definitely haven't felt supported for a while now. That's definitely impacting our operations for sure.
Okay. I guess I'd like to hear more if you have further thoughts on that, on the nature of the lack of support.
Yeah,
is it related to bargaining units or something else?
I'll just make one brief comment just because just talking to colleagues in the area that are in the field, obviously don't work for Tompkins County, but are police officers in other counties that I've been trying to recruit to come here. A lot of them cite the fear that they wouldn't have a job. Recommendation number one, put a lot of fear into lateral transfers, that this transferring into Tompkins County might not be a secure job decision. I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, and I think the overall feeling is, despite any good positive results from police reform or police reimagination, there hasn't been a lot of good feelings expressed to the people that work at the sheriff's office, to put it mildly. I think they kind of just came out of the whole process feeling like they were left hanging, and they just don't feel supported. It's easy as that. Despite what's going on nationally, I expressed last month, and I've never seen anything like this before at the sheriff's office. We used to be the agency that everybody was fighting to get into. We very rarely, we would put people in the academy just because it was the right thing to do and try to give people the opportunity, but everybody was trying to leave other agencies to come work here. And it's just simply not the case anymore. And to see somebody leave and go to Elmira or the city of Cortland, that's very discouraging to me, because it used to be completely the other way around.
Okay. And Jen, I think you sent an email, something about the process for sponsoring people for the academy.
Yeah, so like the short answer is we can't. The deputy sheriff's position is a full-time permanent competitive status position, which means we have to hire off of our civil service list. They need to be reachable on our civil service list. Part-time departments or village PDs are often able to do this because they could hire non-competitive status, which allows them to hire off a civil service list and then sponsor people for phase 2 of the academy. We don't have that option. Sometimes in the jail, we're able to hire provisionally because we exhaust our list, which means we don't have a valid civil service list. So we could sometimes get away with hiring people provisionally, but on the road that barely happens, that we could exhaust the list, meaning we have less than 3 candidates. And I don't even think you could probably hire deputy sheriff provisionally because you have to go to the academy beforehand, where corrections you could work and then go to the academy.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. And Sheriff, on another topic, I saw your email regarding call outs on the SWAT vehicle. Well, the emergency vehicle, I don't even know what it's called. I should, I apologize. In asking for some information about those call outs, I'd like to be clear. we do not need to see any confidential information or to see anything that would compromise an ongoing investigation. What was, I believe, contemplated in our resolution on reimagining public safety was to get some sense of what has the vehicle been used for, and the SWAT group, when they're called out, what kinds of calls those are, and what were the results of the call outs. It's my understanding is that those incidents have generally been resolved satisfactorily. But that's the kind of report I think we'd like to get. And it probably makes sense to get a joint report with the city and the county, because it sounds like you haven't had many call outs.
Yeah, thanks, Rich, for bringing that up. That did slip my mind. I didn't have it on my notes, and I hadn't gotten back to your email yet. Your email was very helpful, as was Matt's, at least in regard to that one call. Yeah, I'll be working on something to get to you. I haven't had time to work on it this week. But yeah, I'll certainly forward that to you. I certainly don't mind sharing any SWAT use by the county that I partook in. As far as getting stuff from the city, I mean, I'll have to leave that up to you. I mean, I'm not going to report on their decisions to use the SWAT team and how they handle those incidences, but I'm certainly responsible for mine, and will share whatever I can for sure.
Okay, Shauna.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in HHS Monday, there is going to be a discussion about the mobile crisis team. And I know that in the past, there has been a struggle to fully staff that operation. And one thing that we're talking about is increasing the amount of pay that the social workers receive whenever they're on call, as to attract more people to volunteer to work on that mobile crisis unit. And then the second thing that we want to do in order to have more employees available is that we are looking to hire another psychiatric social worker who would be available for that mobile crisis unit. So I just wanted to fill you guys in. I know that you probably talk about this, but I also know that this has been a really big asset for the Sheriff's Department and IPD.
Yeah, I mean, so far, I'll be honest, it hasn't been a huge asset. Maybe it's for a discussion another time. I think I made clear, I'm certainly a proponent of a co-response model when it comes to this kind of thing, which that wouldn't solve that. But yeah, more people with them probably would be somewhat beneficial. We haven't been able to use them too often now. A lot of times they currently don't come out. Either they can't because of staffing, or they won't. And in the role they play currently on those calls is extremely limited. Usually they give us a 9:45 pickup order, and that's their extent of being there. The law enforcement is still handling the call from start to finish. So just something to keep in mind, but thank you for that. I wasn't aware of that.
And I'll just give you a brief update. I've been having weekly meetings with Harmony, who's the mental health commissioner, and her and I are working on a grant application to bring the CIT training here. I know Derek mentioned last month we had some ideas about training funds. It's been brought to our attention there's a grant opportunity. So Harmony and I are working together to fill that grant application out. We have till the 22nd of July to fill that out. And what that would include would be the 40-hour weekly training, but then yearly training after that, as well as they would redo the sequential mapping for phases 1 and 2. And then it would also involve the 911 center as well. So we are working on that, and Harmony and I have had some good conversations over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully this could be all incorporated in that recommendation.
Really nice. Thank you both.
Yeah, Harmony's been really good, is my understanding.
Yeah, she's been great to work with.
That's great to hear.
All right, Ann.
Thanks, Rich, for letting me chime in here. So two things. I haven't caught the whole meeting. I'm multitasking, but going back to what was said further back regarding getting estimates on the jail. I would be in favor of adding, if it's not already part of what you're going to be asking for, an estimate on adding some type of pod onto the jail, comparing that to however many millions it would cost to shore up the jail. And then the second thing is I would like to see if we could set something up, if possibly some legislators, and I'd be willing to go have a meeting, go attend one of the staff meetings at the sheriff's department to help with communication and let them know that we do value them and hear their feedback.
Okay. Sheriff, if you think that would be a useful thing, that might be a step to take to let the deputies talk to us directly and share their concerns. We'd be happy to do that, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Okay, anything else for the sheriff? All right, thank you. Next up, District Attorney. Welcome, Matt. And we pre-gamed a little bit. I was asking you about the trials. I don't know if you had anything more you wanted to add there, but sounds like they're underway.
They are underway, thanks. And I anticipate that we will, with each one, probably have a little more flexibility from the court system and be able to do more and be more efficient about it. We're hoping that the mask mandate will be lifted. We're still wearing masks in court, which is really tough, for everybody to hear each other. So that would be a big deal for us when we don't have to wear masks in court. Other updates, I'm hoping and trying to, and I'll just reiterate my willingness to be involved in all of the processes with the CJC, and I volunteered to help or to serve on the city's task force. I think my perspective is really valuable. I hope to be able to be involved in some capacity in all those things, and so I'm going to keep bugging people to be involved in those things. Aside from that, I mean, it's very busy. We've had some really terrible crimes, some really unique in their horribleness type of crimes recently, violent things that have happened, and those are certainly getting a lot of attention. And I think that's part of a national trend, but we like to think that we don't have those things as often here in Tompkins County, and that doesn't really seem to be true. So we've been very busy with violent crimes, and there's been a good number of gun cases recently. Somebody tried to walk into the courthouse with a loaded handgun last week. So those cases. I'm trying to handle the gun cases myself as much as possible and try to come down because they're very serious cases. We're always open to trying to do what's best for the community and the individual, but those cases are tough to stomach because the more illegal handguns that are out there on the street, the more problems that happen and shots fired and people get hit. That's not something that we can really abide. So I'm happy to take questions. Otherwise, it's business as usual and busy as usual.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any questions for our district attorney? Okay, seeing none. Next up is the Department of Emergency Response, and I see Jessica is with us.
Hello.
Oh, wait, I do see a question in the chat from Mike Sigler. Was the loaded handgun legal? Was it a licensed handgun?
No.
Okay.
We don't arrest people for carrying licensed handguns. I don't arrest anybody, but the police don't arrest people for that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Henry.
Matt, can you talk to us about the statewide or whatever program that you were named to and what your role is going to be in that?
Sure. That what Henry's talking about is there's an organization that's based out of John Jay University in New York City. It's called the Institute for Innovation in Prosecution. Interestingly, the executive director up until last year was a woman named Lucy Lang. She is one of the candidates for Manhattan DA right now in the Democratic primary. But that organization is focused on nationally progressive prosecution, innovative prosecution, best practices, talking about things like restorative justice and really trying to be a leader in talking about issues where we can be forward thinking with prosecution. And they deal with a lot of the big DA's offices across the country, but they just started a program called Beyond Big Cities, and it involves, it's focused on smaller jurisdictions. So there are people, and that program is sponsored by Microsoft. So there are 15 prosecutors who are invited to participate. I'm the only one from New York State. There are prosecutors from Pennsylvania, Washington State, Louisiana, Minnesota, off the top of my head. But we've had one meeting so far. It was done by Zoom, and it was mainly an introductory meeting, but we're going to have one once a month. And at some point they'll be in person, but they're on Zoom for now. And the next one is about restorative justice. So I'm really interested in that. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I've been trying to engage with that organization and participate in their webinars and interact with them for a couple of years now. And so I got to know them a little bit, and they reached out to me to invite me to be part of the program. And I think it's going to be a really valuable experience.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. Anything else? Good. All right, let's move on to the Department of Emergency Response. I see Jessica is with us. Welcome. And
yeah. I really don't have anything other than what's in the report. So unless you have questions.
Okay. I was looking through the 911 calls. It does seem like the domestic disturbance calls continue to run higher than average, although regular disturbances seem to be lower by close to the same amount. I don't know if we can make any sense of that, but I did see that in your report. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for it.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments for Department of Emergency Response? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Department of Probation. And I see Dan and Carla are with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Wanted to point out that we recently completed our 2020 annual report. It's a little later than we usually get it out. It's posted on our website now, and I did forward a copy to county administration and I believe to you, Mr. John, to disseminate to others. I don't know if you've seen it yet. But I can forward it to anyone in the Public Safety Committee.
Yes, please. I did receive it. I have not gone through it yet, but if you want to share it with everybody on the committee, that would be great.
I will do so. And no, we're quite proud of it. I mean, it's a document that takes a lot of time and a lot of analysis, and wanted to thank my staff for all the effort that they put into it. So we're happy to have that completed.
Okay.
Recently, pardon me?
I was just going to ask Michelle if she could make a note to put that on our agenda for our July meeting, that we put a discussion of that annual report on.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions that you folks have once you have a chance to look through it. With the relaxation of the COVID rules and number of our staff that have been vaccinated, we've restarted our use of EM which we had suspended for a little while based upon the number of COVID positive cases and the amount of contact that we have to have with participants when we install EM. So we're using EM again, planning on reopening day reporting mid-July. I think when we do so, that'll be on a reduced number of folks again, not in probably 5 to 6 a day, at least until COVID continues to peter out here for us. We could reopen that now, but the staff we need to do that out on medical leave. So we're planning for that. Actually had our first case today where we advocated for a probationer to have his marijuana prohibition removed from his probation conditions. So it's a historic day in Tompkins County. The court approved the removal of a marijuana condition for an individual who was sentenced about a week, one side or the other of recreational marijuana being legalized, and doesn't seem to be a factor in his crime. So all parties were in agreement that it was not a condition that we needed to maintain for that person. So felt a little bit strange advocating for that, being that it's not something that it's always been something that we advocated against in the past, but we're trying to grow with the times. So it was satisfying to see the process work. Other than that, we interviewed this week to fill an admin 2 opening that we have. We had 3 good candidates, have made a decision, and are going to extend an offer contingent on background check to an individual that we interviewed yesterday. So looking forward to being back up to full staff.
Okay. I would note our appreciation to your department, as well as Matt and Lance and several others, for coordinating and making sure there was a consistent and coordinated position on what we're going to do with marijuana cases coming out of legalization. I think that was a good, responsible thing to do. And
yeah, I think it's going to help us avoid some communication problems and just everybody be on the same page. So thank you to Lance and Matt also for all the work that you put into that.
Yeah. Okay. And you have a resolution.
Yes.
Okay. This is authorization to accept an award of a grant for the benefit of the drug treatment courts of Tompkins County, ID 10088. Could I get a motion on that? Shauna moves, Glenn seconds. Is there anything you want to tell us about that, Dan?
This is the money that supports the drug courts in a lot of their the smaller things that they do. I believe it's a $25,000 grant. I don't have it in front of me. As far as doing graduation parties and recognizing the participants and their successes, it's always been put to good use, and I think that we can continue to utilize that to reward our participants for their successes.
Okay. Any questions or comments? We ready to vote? I'll call the roll. Henry?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Glenn? Glenn?
Yes.
Okay. Dave?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so that passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anything further for probation? Seeing none, okay. We'll move on to the assigned counsel program. Welcome, Lance.
Hello, everyone. I don't have a lot to comment, just to note that if when we see Dan wearing a Bob Marley t-shirt, we know we're in real trouble. On that.
Hold your breath.
I'm not going to comment except to say I confiscated those from a kid just because I didn't think they were appropriate. So I don't really expect to see you wearing one. So not that, just a note on some discussion of the crime rate. Matt's right. We've had a little cluster here of some unusual or eye-catching maybe a good way, acts or incidents. But overall, we're not seeing a huge sustained increase in the crime rate. That hasn't happened, which is, I think, good news overall. And kind of something similar, I think, across the nation. There's been an increase in murders the last year, but not in other types of violent crimes, really. So, a year from now, we'll have to see where we're at. I saw Mike Sigler's text or whatever in the comment section. I think Matt can correct me if I'm wrong. My recollection of the incident at the courthouse was that was someone non-local. And Mike, we get those from time to time. What's legal in other states where there may not be much in the way of rules tends to be illegal here. Still makes it illegal here. And I think it was a concern because we don't see that here. People walking in to courthouses with weapons. I can tell you, having been out west, that's not always the case. I mean, I think our situation's preferable, but just to give you an update, I know you were asking about that. Yeah.
Matt?
It's not a situation where it was somebody who had a permit from out of state, or it was lawful out of state and came in not knowing our rules. It was something a little more, without commenting too much on the ongoing case. It was more of a concern than that.
Okay, well, certainly more to come there. So we'd love to hear when we can hear.
That's it for me. Nothing else.
I assume that assigned counsel is picking up trials as well as the district attorney was talking about, and you're finding the experience it's working?
I have some personal concerns about how the courts are handling it, but it seems to be the processes are going forward. I share the concern about Matt. It's difficult, and you get disparity between courts, but it's difficult for people to be talking with masks on and people to understand it. So it'll be good when that mandate changes. I'm hoping that soon, but it makes it hard for the attorneys, prosecutor, and defense to wear a mask while they can be trying to talk and then sit down. It's not the most pleasant experience, but they're going forward. I mean, it's good. Things are moving forward. We can't sit forever.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments for assigned counsel? Great. Okay. Any other business to come before the Public Safety Committee? All right. We've finished early. Always a nice thing. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Henry moves, Shauna seconds. All those in favor, if you can just raise your hand. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay.
Hey, Rich.